The US Department of Justice has released more than 3 million additional pages of documents related to its investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. This marks the largest single batch of Epstein-related files made public to date. The documents, released on Friday, shed new light on Epstein's relationships with several prominent figures in both the United States and the United Kingdom. At the same time, officials caution that the release includes a significant number of uncorroborated tips provided to law enforcement. According to the Department of Justice, images of all women were redacted, with the exception of Epstein's associate Ghislaine Maxwell, in order to protect the identities of survivors. The DOJ also withheld documents containing personal or medical information, as well as any materials depicting child sexual abuse, death, or graphic violence. Justice Department officials say this is likely the final major release of Epstein-related records. Federal prosecutors initially identified approximately 6 million pages responsive to the Epstein Files Transparency Act, but later determined that roughly half of those documents would ultimately be released, citing overcollection concerns. Despite the scale of the release, some lawmakers say it is not enough. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna is among those demanding the full disclosure of the remaining files in accordance with the law. He argues that key materials are still missing, including FBI 302 forms, which summarize victim interviews, as well as prosecution memoranda drafted in 2019. Khanna has warned that if the remaining documents are not released, and if survivors are not satisfied with the disclosure, he and Congressman Thomas Massie are prepared to pursue impeachment or contempt proceedings. That raises the next major question. What exactly is contained in the files that have been released, and who do they reference? The New York Times reports it identified more than 5,300 documents referencing former President Donald Trump among the millions of pages released. Those records include unverified tips submitted to the FBI alleging misconduct involving Trump and Epstein. According to reporting, those tips were summarized by agents last summer but were not supported by corroborating evidence. The files also include interview notes from Epstein survivors describing interactions involving Trump, including one account alleging that Epstein brought a survivor to Mar-a-Lago. Importantly, those notes do not allege misconduct by Trump. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche stated in a recent interview that the DOJ reviewed allegations of sexual misconduct involving Trump in connection with Epstein but did not find credible evidence warranting further investigation. Trump has acknowledged knowing Epstein in the past, a relationship he says ended in the early 2000s. He has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. Still, questions remain about what has not been released. Former Palm Beach County State Attorney Dave Arenberg notes that prosecutors once drafted a 60-count indictment against Epstein that was never filed, opting instead for a plea deal widely criticized as lenient. Internal prosecution memos related to that decision have not been made public. Other materials referenced in prior disclosures, including photographs and a birthday letter allegedly written by Trump, have also not been released. The DOJ has cited deliberative process and work product privileges as justification for withholding certain documents. However, critics argue that the Epstein Files Transparency Act does not allow those exceptions to be used to block disclosure. As a result, a standoff appears to be forming between Congress and the administration. Legal experts suggest the next tangible step could involve congressional lawsuits to compel the release of the remaining documents, or new legislation aimed at closing loopholes in the existing law, which critics say lacks a clear enforcement mechanism. For now, millions of pages have been released, but many questions remain unanswered. And the fight over transparency is far from over.